This is Misty Moon, your holistic health practitioner, health coach, yoga instructor, and sound healer. And today for Womb Wisdom, we will be discussing how to heal depression holistically. We'll discuss what depression is, how it affects women. Then we'll take an esoteric view of depression. And then finally, I'll offer some holistic tools that you can begin using right away. So, depression is something that I know very, very well. I know depression so well that for the majority of my life, I thought that I was just destined to be depressed and that there was no hope, no help for me. After trying so many different modalities, there was no hope. And I realized in hindsight that I was going about it the wrong way. And that's something that we'll get into further on. But with depression, it's like, at least for me, it was like waking up with a dark cloud over me, or like a stink that just wouldn't go away no matter what I did. And even if I'm having fun with my friends or with my husband, it was just always there in the background. My after going through what I went through over the last 2 years and finally figuring out how to create a holistic regimen that can really shift me out of depression, knowing from where I've come from and knowing that it's possible, it is now my mission as a health coach to help women overcome depression as well. This is I found my calling, and I had to go through what I went through in order to get to this place. So this is a topic that I'm extremely passionate about, and my intention is to offer information, insight, a different perspective, with the hopes of inspiring women that if you're dealing with depression, that you can overcome it. It's going to take work. You have to be diligent. You have to be persistent and resilient. But I promise you, I guarantee that you'll be able to overcome it. I am living proof. Okay. So what is depression? Depression is a mood disorder characterized by persistent sadness and a lack of interest in pleasure in life. It is not a weakness. It is absolutely not a weakness, and it's not something that you can just snap out of. And that was something that I used to get really frustrated with, especially as a teenager. I would have moments where I would just start crying for no reason because I was just so distressed. And instead of my parents sitting down and asking me, hey, what's going on? Do you want to talk about it? Instead, it was like, oh, you're just going through a phase. So you'll be fine, or just snap out of it. And then as I got older, because I'm innately positive and bubbly, whenever I would try to express, even with counselors in the past, about my depression, I was never taken serious. Again, it was just perceived as if, oh, I'm just going through some type of phase. But it's not that at all. It's a deep rooted despair. And it's due to a chemical imbalance. And so evidence has indicated that neurotransmitters plays a significant role in depressive disorders. And so for those who don't know, neurotransmitters are the chemicals within the brain that carries messages from your brain to your nervous system. And when the messages are not delivered correctly, then depression can kick in. And there are many factors that can trigger the imbalance of the neurotransmitters, and it's such as like trauma, poor diet, genetic conditions, blood sugar imbalances, mental illnesses, hormone imbalances, lack of exercise, excessive drug and alcohol use, and believe it or not, digestive difficulties. And there has been research done that shows that there is a direct correlation or direct relationship between the gut and the brain. And that's going to be another video for another time that I will do because it's very, very fascinating. But for now, just know that yes, digestion can play a part in creating an imbalance with your neurotransmitters, which triggers depression. And then also a toxic environment can cause the imbalance of the neurotransmitters, such as poverty or an excessive hostile home or environment. So depression affects more than 264 million people worldwide. And within that, women are twice as likely to develop depression than men. The Central of Disease Control and Prevention statistically says that 10.4% of women were found to have depression compared with 5.5% of men. It's crazy, right? And so what is it? Why is that? Why is it that women are more prone to have depression than men? Well, you have hormonal imbalances, we got PMS, we got menopause, we got pregnancy. Unfortunately, women are more likely to experience sexual assault and child sexual abuse more so than men. And then this is something that I found really interesting. Our coping styles are different. So women, we tend to cope through emotional focused by thinking about the same thing over and over again. Like we'll just fester in it, which is true because I definitely know that I do that. And oftentimes, unfortunately, those thoughts tend to be sad or dark. Where men on the other side are more problem focused. So they choose to use distracting coping styles to help them forget about their troubles. So they don't even want to deal with it. Where for us, we're emotional creatures. We're innately sensitive. So we fester in it. And then we get caught up in that negative loop. And then it just creates mental havoc in the body. And then another factor as far as why women are more prone to get depression than men, or the social issues, such as unequal power and status in society, stress from work, family responsibilities, having to balance both the family, responsibilities and work, and then roles and expectations, such as body image. So all those play a part. There's so much that we're carrying as women. So, it makes sense that we're more prone to experience depression more so than men. And there are tons of symptoms, but just to name a few, there's hopelessness, which I completely resonate with that one more than anything. Like I mentioned earlier, I really truly thought that I was screwed, that this was just it. I thought that I was a mistake, that I wasn't supposed to be here, and that there was nothing that could do, no essential oils, no massage, no Reiki, no shamanistic practice or prayer could help me. I really truly thought that. It also triggers anxiety, agitation, low self-esteem, reduced energy. You just feel this heaviness. There's this movie. What was it? A movie? No, there's a show called Big Mouth on Netflix. It's an animated show. It's for adults. But there was just, and it's the premise is of these teenagers. It's focused on teenagers going through puberty. And there was this one episode where one of the girls developed depression because her parents were getting a divorce. And the way that they interpret her depression was this cat in her head. It was like this, so they had hormone monsters. That's what it is. They have hormone monsters. And so with the boys, their hormone monsters were like super horny and very obnoxious. So with this one girl, her hormone monster turned into a cat, this big, fluffy, warm cat, and she would just lay on top of the girl. And that cat represented depression. And that's how it feels. It's just this heavy, warm blanket that you just can't get off of you. And there's just moments where you just cannot get out of bed. You cannot fester up the motivation. And it's so frustrating, especially if you have these ideas and ambitions and things that you want to do, but you just can't grasp it because you have this heaviness on you. So, yeah, depression is a beast, I'm telling you. Reduced energy. Also, other symptoms are trouble with concentration, making decisions, and loss of appetite, or it could be the opposite where you emotionally eat and you binge. And then in severe cases, it can trigger thoughts of death and even suicide. Okay? So, I want to just quickly explore an esoteric perspective of depression, because this is all about holistic, right? It's about holistic perspective. It's so meaning that we are addressing the issues on all different dimensions. So one way to perceive depression, I personally subscribe to this truth that our souls chose to go through certain challenges in order for our spirits to evolve. And for an example, for me, I, without a shadow of a doubt, believe that my spirit chose to be born African American, to be born with the parents that I have, growing up with the dysfunctions that I grew up with, dealing with alcoholism, drug addiction within my family, being born female, being born in the United States, being born during this particular time in human history. I chose to deal with depression. I chose to deal with low self-esteem because all that has molded me into the person that I am now. So that when I pass away, my spirit would have been able to accomplish these lessons in order to take into the next phase, whatever's next for me. I truly believe that. So that's one way to look at depression, that instead of believing that life happens to us, life happens for us, that we go through these trials and tribulations in order to be molded into the way that God intended us to be. And think about God and in creation. This is something else I've been contemplating lately, is duality. You think, well, why can a child just be murdered at the age of 2? Why do we have all this injustice in the world? There's duality for a reason. We need the light and dark in order, again, for us to experience these lessons. So I just want to offer that perspective. And I have a quote here for you from Julie Redstone. She is a teacher at the Light Omega, which is a holistic facility. And she says this: as with all experiences that are painful and that create limitation, the deeper self or soul can bring out of this something valuable for the heart and for the spirit. Through this, though this may not immediately be apparent to the self in the midst of pain, grief, or sorrow, what has limitations on the other side offers the possibility for learning and for greater life on the other. I truly believe that. I truly believe that um, if we change our mindset, it all comes down to thoughts, and that's something we're going to get into next. It all comes down to our thought process. If we could, um, again, use our trials and tribulations, use our challenges as an asset in order for us to evolve, then the sky's the limit. And they even say that art, for an example, a lot of really good art, a lot of good music has come out of strife. When you look at hip hop, for an example, true hip hop from back in the 80s in New York, a lot of those hip hop artists they lived in the ghettos. They lived in the what do you call them? I can't think of the word right now, but just extreme poverty. And so they were hungry, and so they needed something, and the music programs were cut during that time in a lot of the urban areas, and so they didn't have instruments. So what did they have to do? They took they took the vinyl of their parents and figured out how to mix it together and then rhyme over it, and then hip hop was birthed. So again, and also lastly, this is something that just came up right now when I think about a seed. A seed is buried in the soil. The soil is dark, it's cold, it's uncertain. And so again, and that seed needed to be in that darkness before it sprouted out into the light. So again, just another perspective of how to perceive depression. Okay, so what I want to share now is what worked for me, and I truly believe that this is something that can be universal. In the past, I saw counselors, I saw coaches, therapists, uh, Reiki, went to Body Mind College where the majority of my education was focusing on my healing with inner child work, rebirthing, like all these different modalities I was trying, but it was like all a la carte. And the difference between then and now, after my episode last year, is now I realize it has to all blend together. And I want to talk about medication for a moment because oftentimes we have aversion over medication, especially us that are more in the holistic world. And I know for me, I was like, I don't do medication, like I'm natural. But like we mentioned earlier, depression it's a chemical imbalance. And so these medications, if you choose, can be used to recorrect that balance in your brain chemistry. But it can't just be that. It's got to be the medication. It's got to be the therapist. And I personally suggest a cognitive behavioral therapist, because with a cognitive behavioral therapist, it's all focusing on your thoughts. So it becomes this routine of what I like to call mental maintenance, right? Because a lot of what happens when we get caught up in these negative loops, then we start to believe that story, and then we constantly perpetuate that negative pattern. Master coach Brooke Castillo has what's called the model, which says that thoughts affect your emotions, Your emotions affect your actions, and the actions affect your results. So if you have these negative loops that you're giving power to, then you're going to continue to act from those negative emotions. But if you get to the point where, kind of jumping the gun here, with the suggestions that I want to offer to you is being aware of your thoughts is something that you can do right away. The moment that you start realizing what your thoughts are, then you neutralize it, because we are not our thoughts. So that's the first step. Just as my coach Anais would say, become a detective. Start to use your emotion as a compass to what your state of mind is. So you can get yourself a journal. The moment you have a thought come up, write it down. Or a moment a thought comes up, just like, hey, all right, low self-esteem or self-judgment, what's going on? And instead of suppressing the emotion, because that's another thing too, whenever these negative emotions come up or negative thoughts come up, we want to suppress it through alcohol, through drugs, through emotionally eating, through toxic relationships. But if we just allow those quote unquote negative emotions to come up, they're there for a reason. They're there to tell us something about ourselves that we need to shift. And you give them space, you look at them objectively, and then eventually with practice, they start to dissipate. And it's not like it happens once or twice and you never have to do it again. It's daily work. It's daily maintenance. So that's a tool. So what I'm jumping again a little bit here. So what I'm communicating here, ladies, sister queens, is that we have to go about this holistically. We have to have, again, if you choose the medication, if your depression is really severe, a cognitive behavioral therapist, a coach. Now, the difference between having a health coach and a therapist, the therapist is only specifically focusing on the cognitive aspect of your health, where your coach is there to guide you towards your spiritual practice, towards your diet, towards your eat, and including the mental state as well. The coach is able to kind of get in and absorb or to help guide you towards all the little nuances of your well-being. Like I said, your physical body, the spirituality, the mental, the emotional. So you have your medication if you choose, your therapist, your health coach. Then you have your exercise. Then you have which in your diet, which is huge. That ties it all together is your connection to God as you understand God. That was the missing ingredients for me, definitely in the past. In the past, I was trying to do it all on my own. And once I tapped into what God means to me, getting the dogma out of the way, that's where the miracles happened. Think about this. Well, I'll share this with you. So I grew up Christian. My parents are Christian. My father's a preacher. And even growing up, I knew that I didn't have a connection. I just never had a connection with Christianity. And just because of the dogma part of it. And so as I've gotten older, I finally have figured out my unique connection with God. And for me, when I think of God, when I sit down and pray, I think about all the awe of life. I think about God as the creator. God is my divine parent. My parents were just the vessel to bring me here, but God is my divine parent that actually created me. I think about the ocean. I think about the creatures within the ocean. I think about the mountains, the stars, the sun, the moon, all the planets. I think about when I cut my finger, when it heals, how miraculous that is. I think about the birds, the soil, the creepy crawlies within the soil. I think about all the amazing things that man did not make. God made that. So if God can make all those things, if God can, if God's the intelligence behind our DNA, but behind every single cell in our body, if God is the source of mathematics and sacred geometry and quantum physics and parallel universes, then God can heal our depression. That's nothing compared to all this other, complex things that God is capable of creating. So if you think about it that way, it helps, it's humbling, and it also takes the pressure off. So you do your work by making sure you're eating well, by being aware of your thoughts, by seeing your therapist, by seeing your coach, and pray and allow God, as you understand God, to take it from there. And you'll be amazed of the grace, when grace just comes through and just guides you through your healing, and you'll know what to do in each given moment. So that's it. It's that easy, right? So how to heal your depression holistically, recapping, Again, if you choose medication, something to look into. And also, let me get more specific about the exercise. So it could be simple as walking. Walking a half an hour to an hour, 5 days a week. If that's too much, even 15 minutes a day. Because what walking does, it stimulates the endorphins in the body, which is the feel good hormones. So that helps to kind of ease ease the discomfort of the depression. And plus, you're outside, you're getting sunlight, and sunlight is known to, because of the vitamin D, that it reduces the depression and the anxiety. Okay, drinking plenty of water, eliminating the processed sugar and processed foods. Processed sugar and foods create inflammation in the body, and then that triggers depression. Okay, and of course, everything in moderation. Like if you want to go out, like, and alcohol is another thing you want to eliminate, but of course, in moderation. If you're out with your girlfriends, you want to have a glass of wine, make sure that you're drinking plenty of water right after. Or if you're out, you want to get dessert after dinner, treat yourself to dessert. But everything is all in moderation. But these are things that you want to be mindful of if you truly want to eliminate depression once and for all. You want to be aware of your diet, drinking plenty of water, getting sunlight, walking, doing yoga. Yoga works wonders for the body because there's certain poses that helps to stimulate certain hormones and gives the endocrine system balance. Medication, if you choose, having a therapist, having a coach, and then the most important part is having a connection to God as you understand God. So that is my share. That's my womb wisdom for today about depression. I hope that this helped on some level. You absolutely can do this. Again, I cannot stress enough that I was suicidal. I was ready to check out for many, many, many years, from the age 11 really up until a year ago. And I am sitting here living proof that you can heal from depression. So it's going to take work. So if you need some guidance, if you're interested in working with me, feel free to hit me up. I'll be more than happy to give you any assistance that you need. I've studied, I'm a health coach, I'm a holistic practitioner, yoga instructor, and I have this experience. And so I can integrate it all into a program that can suit you if you need. So anyway, peace and love to you, and I look forward to the next video. Until then, take care. Alrighty, bye-bye.